Yeah?
Yeah.
It's okay?
Yes,
Thank you.
we are, go.
Okay. Okay, just to pick up here in the mitzvah, Kuf Mem Tes, we left off. V'yosenu mitzuvin. Mitzuvin here is a bona fide. This is the Loshen Ma'amurim, which is a bona fide tzivoy, which is very interesting. He starts off with a shrana, which is a basically religious law, and he ends up with a tzivoy. V'yosenu mitzuvin livdoik oison be'elu hasimonim he who Mitzvas Aseh. So I think this follows the old principle that we discussed in Mitzvas Aseh and our Forest L'Dolim, that even though L'Chatchila is religious law, since the Kavanas HaTorah is man should act according to the religious law, there's an assumed tzivui, and it makes every shrana into an amal. And that's Heyesenu Mitzuvim Livdoik Oison Bi'elu Hasimonim Hu Mitzvas Aseh. And the makol for the Mitzvah Aseh Hu Omroi Zois Hachaya She Toichel V'goyme V'loshin Sifra Oisa Toichlu Oisa B'achilu V'ein Beheima Tmeya B'achilu. So if you noticed, the Rambam is using two different psukim. Zois Hachaya She Toichlu is one pasuk, and then the Sifra is on another pasuk, Oisa Toichlu. So here, basically, it's one pasuk to another pasuk back to back, and what basically you have, it says Zois Hachaya Toichlu, and then it says Ois So really what it is basically kefil. Well, it's kefil ashlomas dinim. What he says is the mitzvahs from tochlu, or from ois techelu, which is pasuk pasuk beis is azois achayeshet tochlu, and pasuk gimel is ois techlu. So we pointed out last week that the Rambam learns both the Isa Aseh and the Mitzvah Aseh from the same pasuk Ois Tochelu. In Mishnah Torah, the Mitzvah Aseh is from Hivdaltem, and the Isa Aseh is from Ois Achayeshet Tochelu or Ois Tochelu. Now, the important thing here, I think we explained the whole discussion last week about then Mitzvah Torah, it's a Mitzvah Havdalah, and it's two separate prokim. Perek Aleph is Havdalah, and we even said that the Rambam might learn that the Isa of Shisur and Ketsuas Ha'oif, it's not Nevela the way the Minchas Chinuch learns. The Ram puts in Perek Aleph of Machos Susur. It's not Perek Daled. Perek Aleph is the Perek of B'dikas Simonim. And the Ram Shita is that normally the Simonim of the aim are moil for the child because everything is Yichus Aminim. And if the mother has Simanei Taira, the child is mutter without the Simanei Taira. But the Chiddush in Ashesua is the Simanei Taira of the mother are not moil. And it doesn't, and its own Simanei Taira irrelevant. So it's impossible to, you're eating without B'dikas Simonim. And that's why it's in Perek Aleph. Now, this is a kumvaseh according to the Rambam, because the Rambam Shita is all Mitzvas Aseh kumvaseh. The Ravid in Minyan HaKotza clearly says that it's a lava bo Mitzvas Aseh. Om Avrom, kol livdoik ein lehem tam. Elo mishum lava bo Mitzvas Aseh. So the best Raiva could understand the Rambam, that's a lava bo Mitzvas Aseh. And it's an Isa Aseh. And the Ramban also, in his Asogas to Shiur Shishi, V'ani lo yebo machlekes gedola. V'achas min adeya is toye boy b'loi sofek. Either the Rambam is mistaken or the Bahag is mistaken. Sheish oid lav ba'aseh b'dova echod, ela she'ein shneim mitzvah ke'inyin b'beheima v'dogim v'oifos hamutorin v'asurin. Oma kosuv b'lehen Aseh zeis Beheima asher toichelu v'dorshu shehu Mitzvas Aseh v'chein tzipa tehira toichelu. Asu oisa Mitzvas Aseh v'chein es ze toichel mikol asher b'mayim is a Mitzvas Aseh. V'adov v'yedua she'ein hakavona loima Shebochlenu habeheima or adog balei simonim tehirin nasa mitzvah. That's insane to say there's a kiyum of eating a beheima tehira. V'im notzudam v'loi nochaloisam, and if you happen to trap them and decide not to eat them because they don't have simonim, excuse me, and it's a beheima tehira and you don't eat it, you're over on the essay. That's crazy. אבל הכוונה, שאומר הכוסף, אלה תאכלו הטמאים, והוא לאו במחל Aseh. בטמא, כשהאויכל הטמאים, אויבה בלאו גומר, והוא לאו במחל Aseh. שהוא Aseh לפי קבלתנו. So what the Ramban is suggesting that the Rambam's counter לאו במחל Aseh, there's no kum v'aseh. ואלו קייצא בהן, מונן הרב, בכלל רמ"ח Mitzvas Aseh. Oma livdoik b'simoni beheimo shenemar zeisa beheimo shetochelu livdoik b'simoni means livdoik in terms of doesn't mean you have to do any bedika. It's an Isa Aseh to eat without simonim. That's the way he interprets the Rambam. Now, the question over here is the Rambam's learning. It's a kiyum, it's a kum v'aseh. But it's very strange because, see, the question is it a kum v'aseh and a lois aseh b'dova echod? The Ramban says it's b'dova echod because he learns an Isa Aseh of achila and a lav of achila. It's b'dova echod, but they're both isurim. But if the Rambam learns that it's bedika before achila is the mitzvah and the ashola is the achila, it's not necessarily b'dova echod. So this is a problem a priori because the in Shiur Shishi the Rambam has three categories of Mitzvas Aseh and Lois Aseh that are counted twice. He has like Shabbos and Yom Kippur on Yontif, where there's an Aseh from Shvis of Malacha or from not eating, refraining from eating, and a lav from doing Malacha or for eating on Yom Kippur. Then he has the an Aseh of ma'anes, of marrying the woman, and a lois aseh of divorcing her. And then there's the opposite, a lavanita laseh, like Shluch HaKan, that there's a lois aseh of taking the tzipor, the mother, and who's hovering over the cane, and a mitzvah aseh to send away. The question is this bedova echod? Because it's really two different things. So, frankly, I don't see any problem over here, because I could assume it's not bedova echod. See, the Rambam's whole discussion at Shiur Shishi about dova echod is to explain that a priori, since it's bedova echod, maybe it should be counted once and not twice. Maybe the lois aseh and the aseh should be counted once. But if it's two separate things, you certainly count them twice. And that was never an issue. So the Rambam doesn't have to have any apologies over here about bedika and the lav of achilas tmeim, because maybe they're two separate things. One's a mitzvah bedika, and the other is an ashara from eating tmeim. But the two separate mitzvahs, certainly because they're two separate things. Or you can say the opposite. It's in the same thing. Okay? But one's an aseh, and there's an aseh and a lav, and the same thing. And then it's really like Shabbos. Whichever way you want, I don't think there's a problem over here. The Ramban's introduction of a new category is only if you assume there's no mitzvah aseh, there's an isa aseh, and a lav is counted twice. So, but that's irrelevant, because according to the Rambam, Pashas is he goes out of his way to say there's a kum v'aseh here. Here, I think I pointed this out last week. And if I didn't, I'll point it out now. The Rambam over here is, the whole purpose over here is to go against Rav Sadigoin. Because the whole Shiur Shishi is against Rav Sadigoin. Because Rav Sadigoin counts whenever there's an aseh and a lois aseh, he counts it as one instead of two. And as you expect, Rav Sadigoin counts the lav of achilas beheima and the aseh is one. That's in Sefer HaMitzvos, Perek Ches, the Mitzvas Hamachal, page 74 in the Sefer HaMitzvos of Sadigoin. Lo yochal min habeheima ela ma sheyesh lo parsa shisua, v'hu malas male gera. Ka'omer kol mafeses parsa, v'heim esre minim, hashor v'akeves, I see v'asor minim, hashor v'akeves v'eis, v'ayo, v'tzatzvi, v'yachmo, v'yael, v'dishon, v'adref, which is the Arabic in the same of the English. The dref is a chayet tehira, as they state in Rav Sadigoin. Shlosh the Rishonim Beisiyim, they're domesticated animals. V'ashiva midborim, they're wild. V'hoitzim min haklal es hagoma v'es ha'neves v'es ha'shov v'es ha'chazir ki b'chol echod me'ela siman echod me'elu kfi sham emuvu. It's only one siman, it doesn't have two simonim. And then the Rav Sadigoin clearly explains this in what he calls Chsimas HaSefer. He writes the following: V'kiven shehete le'echol bal chayim hamay legeira v'shosei shesa hu ho'isa al ma she'eno ma legeira v'eno shosei shesa hechshavnu eshteim mitzvah achas. The lav and the aseh are one, because you can't imagine every time you eat a beheima tmeya, you violate the lav and the aseh, and you can't separate them. But matzah and chometz, you can separate them. and therefore it's counted too. Ki efshe shiochal shneim ki echod, v'ein isuroi legabe achometz tzivui al achilas hamatzah, ki hu yochol lechol dvorim acher muvadon. Hechshavti oisem shtei mitzvahs. He has the mitzvah of Shivas Yom Techol Hamatzahs and a lav of chametz. Okay. And I get the impression, so I'm not a little bit confused. I don't even know if he has a kumvasei, like he probably could be like the Ravid and the Ramban, that there's no kumvasei, and it's isasei, and it's b'dov echod. And Rav Sadia is basically the Ramban and the fourth principle, that it's b'dov echod, but really the Rav Sadia disagrees, and it's one. Okay, now, again, just to tell you the Pesuk in Vayikra, Dabu b'nei Yisrael leimo zeis achai asher techelu mikol Beheima asher ha'oretz kol mafeses parsa b'shasesa parsa ma'alas geira b'Beheima oisa techelu. It's one after the other of oisa techelu, but the Ram doesn't count it twice. It's all one mitzvah, and one it counts in Makol, one is the Sifra, but it's all the same. It's at the worst, it's kefil. So then he says, "V'ein beheima tmeya b'achila, kloima beheima sheyu bo simonim oelu mutar le'ochla, v'yoyre zeh shebeheima she'ein bo ela simonim eina mutares b'achila, v'lav habo michlal aseh aseh." And this is the Ram's general shita, that lava bo machal say, when the matiki ashmur say lava bo machal say, you can come to conclusion there's a mitzvah say kum vasei over here. And this is the Ram is using this as the proof, the sifra, that the matiki ashmur are saying there's a mitzvah say over here. So he flips the Ravid. The Ravid says lava bo machal say, and it's an isa say. The Ram says, whenever the Matikei Shmur say the lava bo b'chal say, it means that there is a mitzvah. Also, kumva say, kmo shu sheyesh etzleinu of lava bo b'chal say, there's a mitzvah say. Ulchein omru acha ma'im hazeh ein li ala b'aseh v'lo yisaseh minayin talmud loyma es hagomo kmo shenivaye b'mitzvah lo yisaseh the love of Tmeim Kufayim Beis. Now, here there's a very interesting thing that lava bo mechal aseh l'cheira, it means what you should. There's something you shouldn't do, and the opposite you should do, and there's a bona fide tzivui. And here is an amazing thing. The lava b'machal say is a bona fide isaseh, but the conclusion of what you should be doing, the bedika, is only a shrana, and you can have a lava b'machal say in the whole apparatus and come up with a shrana. It's very, very odd. It could be that the oddity of this is what the change in Mishnah Torah. And if you recall, the Ram Mishnah Torah learns the Aseh, the Isa Aseh from Tochlu and Perek Beis, and the Mitzvah Aseh from Avdollah. So then you can end up with the different categories. And we just have to understand whether in Mishnah Torah it is a Shrana or not. But the learning from the Toichlu is not the source over here for anything. According to the Ram Mishnah Torah, it's a separate mitzvah of Avdol, and then you understand where Bedika comes from. The whole idea of Bedika makes a lot more sense if you learn it from Teichlu, you assume that you have to have Simonim, Simanei do Bedika. It's a little bit odd to say the deriving the mitzvah, but if it's Vavdaltem, it makes a lot of sense. There's a mitzvah Bedika. Here also, certainly in Sefer HaMitzvos, you have not only there's a lack of symmetry that the Aseh is only a Shurana and the Isa Aseh, Lava Aseh is a bona fide Isa Aseh. You also have that they're very different, and this we pointed out. Rab Chaim says that you don't have to have a parallel structure, a mirror image in the Mitzvas Aseh and the Isa Aseh, and he says you can have an Isa Aseh in a giluach of a Nazir Tameh, even though there's no Kiyum Aseh. Here also you can have an Isa Aseh in Achila, and the Mitzvah Aseh is Bedika prior to Achila. Here the Ram continues. Hine kvar hisboyev she'omroi she'omru oisa teichlu mitzvah aseh v'o'in zachati l'chov v'hu sh'anu mitzuvim livdoik ela simon b'chol beheima v'chaya v'yoz mutar l'ochla. See here, the Rambam's general shita, that whenever the Matiki Ashmur say Mitzvas Aseh, and this is why the Rambam, it's a raya that they say there's a Mitzvah Aseh over here. And even though you would assume there's an Isa Aseh, but the Lava Mukhal Aseh, you conclude also there's a Mitzvah Aseh. And even though you would never assume there's a Mitzvah Bedika, I assume that's also subsumed under what the Matiki Ashmur said. They said Mitzvah Aseh. Derech Agav, we said that in, I think we pointed this out last week, that Mishnah Torah, the Ram's opinion is that Lava B'Mochal Aseh is not a Raya, there's a Mitzvah Aseh. And he has various cases that the Isa Krova of Chaya on the Mizbeach is a Lava B'Mochal Aseh, and there's no Mitzvah Aseh in the minyan. See here, then he can have Teichlu as an Isa Aseh, and the Mitzvah Aseh is completely something else, is Vivdaltem. And here, the Ram says, Vadin Azeh Hu HaMitzvah. He says, for Inyan b'mitzvah zo, Mash zachalti l'chov v'hu she'anu mitzuvin, livdoik eilu asimonim, b'chol beheima v'chaya, v'yoz mutar l'ochlon, v'adin azeh hu hamitzvah. V'adin azeh hu hamitzvah. So what's the din? Azeh mitzvah? It's like we said in Aforos L'Dorim, that wherever there's a din, the din is there's a religious legislation, and the mitzvah is lodun. And it doesn't mean lodun in a judicial fashion, but as the Ram says in Minyan HaKotzer, he has a case of Shirana by Mechemes Rishus, La'aseis, in Kuf Tzadi, I say Kuf Tzadi, La'aseis b'Mechemes Rishus, Kemishbar HaKotzer B'Torah. Shenema kisikrav eloir. It means the lodun is to act according to the shrana, to act according to the Dinei HaTorah in Mechemes Rishus. This is Beheima and Chaya. I think we pointed out last, so just mention again, it's very odd. The Sefer Chinuch says that the mitzvah b'dikas simonim also apply to the difference between Beheima and Chaya, which is very odd because the Ram clearly says that you're supposed to differentiate Tmeim and Tehirim, and both Beheima and Chaya are Tehirim, and the simonim of Chaya are only the Rabbanon. And the nafkamina has nothing to do with Achila. It's a question whether you mechuyev in Kisei Adam and the Isa Chelev. The Isa Chelev and Beheima, and the mitzvah Kisei Adam and Chaya. And the Chinuch says you're mekayim the mitzvah b'dikas simonim by differentiating between Beheima and Chaya, which is odd. However, the Rambam quotes Chaya. The Rambam quotes Chaya. And the differentiate between Kisei Adam and Chelev and the Simonim, he quotes in Perek Aleph. So you get the impression he may be of the opinion like the Chinuch, which is very odd. Even though in the Protei Mitzvahs and in his discussion in Mishnah Torah, it's very clear that the mitzvahs differentiate between Tehillim. It's very odd. Now let's go on to the next mitzvah. I just want to say one thing. As odd as mitzvah kuf mem tes is, kuf nun, it just makes the kuf mem tes look very simple. Because what's happening in kuf mem tes is a violation of all the principles that we set up in the Sefer Mitzvahs. The guiding principle is mitzvahs reflect themselves in Torah Shebiksav or in a Pirush Makubal. And the Rambam over here is about to introduce a mitzvah to check ofos by Simonim. And the Simonim are not, and we'll see, we'll prove it, are not mentioned in Torah Shebiksav and not a Pirush Makubal. But Chazal came to these Simonim under their own, with their own apparatus and research. And there's a mitzvah to do a b'dika on oifos, a Mitzvas Aseh Simonim, which is very odd. And we have to know exactly how he did it. Mitzvah Kufnun. והמצווה החמישים ומאה היא שציוונו מהיר he שציוונו is an alamar, and he does this, he makes an alamar in oifos, and that's a bona fide command and not a shrana. Oifos he makes in a chagov mendogim. But this is really not a problem because at the end of Kufnun Beis, he clearly says everything's a shana. But what he's trying to stress is he stresses in the mitzvah of Aforos Nedorim that halacha l'maaseh there's no difference. It may start as a shrana, but the assumed command makes him turamal. Because if the Torah is said to act according to religious legislation, so there's a bona fide tzivui. Okay. So that, okay. Tzivonu, livdoik, remember that the word livdoik at the beginning of the mitzvah is not there. Ibn Tibin puts it because the Ram uses it in other places. Simanei oif. So there's a mitzvah, amal, to be boidik with Simanei oif. Gam kain. What does it mean, gam kain? Like Beheima. So the same way there's a Mitzvas Aseh in Beheima and a Chaya to be boidek and see the Simanei Tahara. There's a Mitzvas Aseh to be boidek Simanei from Oif. Okay. Now, before we get involved and see, how did the Rambam pull this off? You have to see, we'll see. But he has a line over here which threw me completely off. And frankly, I can't explain it. He says, "Vuhu shiyu ksas minim mimenu levad mutorim." There are a few mine oifos which are mutter, and we find those minim by simonim. Okay, now, what can I say? The text, no matter which one you have it, the way it's in Imitibitshu, ksas minim mumeno levad, and the in kapach sherak kama minim mimenu yiyu mutolim. But whichever one you want, it's only a little. So I don't know. I don't know what to say, but I'll read you Gemara, and you can deal with the problem yourself. The Gemara is very clear. The roiv minim in oifos at tahirim. Gemara chulin samach gimel amebeis. Toni avimi berei drabavo. Zayin meis mine dogim hein. V'ches meis mine chagovim. U'lo'ifos ein mitzvah. So Gemara says lo'ifos ein mitzvah. That's what Abimi berei drabavo. Oifos ein mitzvah. Frag the Gemara chav dalet havo. There are 24. Elo u'lo'ifos teherim ein mitzvah. There's only chav dalet oifos temeim. But if it's tahirim ein mitzvah, there's no number. So the chayr is certainly more than 24. Tanya Rebbe Omer Golav Yadu Lefnei Misha Oma V'Hoy Olam She Beheima Tmeya Meruba Min HaTehera. There are more Beheima Tmeyas than Teheras. Lefigach Mona Kosu B'Tehera, because it always mentions the that which is less, the minority, not the majority. And since the minority are the behemoths, the chayis teherais, so it mentions those. Then he says, Golu v'yadua lifnei misha oma b'hoy olam she'oifos teherin merubin al atmeim lefikach moina hakosav batmeim. It's very clear. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's I'm done the fun of Bekalka, but the Gemara clearly says that it's Roif Tehirim. Now, the Simanei Oif. So the Rambam, it starts like this, and it's very, very clear. The Simanei Oif loy nemru min hatera. Simanei oif, and that's min hatera, as you know, the Ram's code word, has nothing to do with Torah Shabbat. It's an amazing thing. Simanei oif lo nemu bat min hatera, and at the same time, there becomes a mitzvah, and this is categorically against Shiur Sheni. And it doesn't faze the Rambam. He goes on. He makes the clear statement, Simanei oif eina min hatera. Avol higiu bichakira. That's Ibn Tibban. And kapach is husagu in what this alas takra is. And that he also translates chakira, but he says it's a very specific type of research. And he says in 21 on this mitzvah in Kapach, he says his chakus ve'akiva, it's careful observation, achrei dover mesuyim, to understand what this is exactly. L'chol klol v'protav, all the different general principles, what you can generalize about all of them, and about specific examples of them, kedei limso es hameshutov, to see the common denominators among them. And those things that differentiate them. So, and there's a tshuva of Yeshua Nogid on it. If you understand it, please help me to understand it. But this is basically what is Chakira. Chazal did research and came up with certain simonim. So, l'cheira, what the Ram clearly says is the Chachmei HaMeseira came to conclusion about these simonim through a careful observation and comparison and conclusions. So no one, I think, could say there's a Kabbalah from Moshe Rabbeinu in the Simanei Oifos. Doesn't make any sense. So the simonim are pure, unadulterated. Rabbanon, and nothing to do with the Torah. So how can this be a mitzvah? And the Ram explains, if you had any doubts about it, Shanachnu keshichipasnu kol aminim shenichtav isuon min achamin motzoru behem skulois yichulum oisom beheim simoni oif tomei. We looked and we found various common denominators. And we were searching and looked. No one told us. It wasn't kach shomati, but it's kach nir beinai. The Kapach's Girsa, it's not going to change in his Targum. He's metarguming like this. Ki kasher bochananu kol haminim shenizboye isuram echod echod motzonu bohem dvorim akolim oisom, the generalities which are the simonim. So it's very clear there's no Kabbalah. And still the Rambam says there's a mitzvah over here. It's absolutely amazing. Next. So, first of all, this is not only a clear in the Rambam that it was the Chachamim who decided and came to this conclusion. It basically is the HaMishnah. The Mishnah Chulin says, Simanei Beheima v'chaya nemru min ha-Torah. The Simanei Beheima chaya v'Simanei Oif lo nemru. Avol omru chachamim. That's pretty clear. They said it. You get the impression there's no Pirush Makubal. It may be Derech Midas HaTorah. He said, Omu Chacham, doesn't say Pi HaShmur. It's Kach Nir Beinai, not Kach Shemanu. Look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Peiches, the differentiation between the two. And this is the Lashon of the Mishnah. In Nun Testament Aleph, in Chulin, Mas Nisan, Simanei Beheima v'chaya nemu min ha-Torah, v'Simanei Oif lo nemu, Avol Omu Chacham, Kol Oif Aderes, v'chulei, and that's the story. And the Rambam in Hilchos Malchus Asus, in Perek Al V'Lochat Hazayin, Mi she'eino makirim ve'eino yodea, shmoseim boidek b'simonim elu, shenosnu chachamim. So, and because of this, all these things together, the Talmud is very clear that Simanei Oifos are only midivrei Sefer, which is antithetical to Shorish Beis. And not min ha-Torah. And that's the Gemara in Chulin, Samach Mo Beis, Simanei Oif lo nemru. Frek the Gemara, V'loi, V'osanyo, Nesher, Samach Aleph and Aleph, Ma Nesher, Meyuchot, She'en lo etzba Yisera, V'zofek, V'enkel Korbanoi Nikolaf, V'deis v'eichel tameh, af kol kiyetzi by tameh, teirin, sheish lahen etzba yisera, v'zav v'kogum v'nikla v'ein deusin, v'eichlin teherin, af kol kiyetzi b'hen teherin, om abai lo'nema pirushon midivrei Torah, ela midivrei Sefrim. So again and again and again. There's no way out of it. The Simonim are from the Chachamim, midivrei Sefer. So the truth is, the Gemara does say that Simanei Oif is a Gemiri, and you could say they're Kabbalah, and Gemiri, according to Rashi and Yuma, is used as Halacha Misinai, Rashi Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, they were Maschel Omar Rav, Chista, Gemiri, Halacha Misinai, and maybe you say, maybe no, Gemiri is Halacha Misinai, maybe only if it's the Hilchos of Gemiri. And however, like by Chatzin Nezik Sreiris, the Movakama, but Chatzin Nezik Sreiris, Hilchos Gemiri, but the Ram even, Rashi there says also Halacha Misinai, but the Ram says that Chatzin Nezik Sreiris in Hilchos Niskei Momon and Pei Beis Halacha Gimel is a Halacha Pi Kabbalah, whatever that means, but it doesn't say it's Halacha Misinai, because the Ram has a very limited number of Halacha Misinai in Hakdamat to Pirush Mishnayis. This is not mentioned. So Hilchos Gemiri mean that they concluded it by itself, I assume, according to the Rambam. I assume. And the Gemara is Lashon by Simanei Oifos. It goes like this. Samachalaf Mebeis, V'el Taima the Kos of Achmona Nesher, Olav Hochi Havamina Leilach Mi Peres Maznia, Havali Peres Laznia, Shnei Ksuma Boin Kiechot, Shnei Kum Besum Kiechot, Ein Melamdim Gemiri, the Ika Bahai Leka Bahai, the Ika Bahai Leka Bahai. There's some Kabbalah, we don't know what this is. Michtei Eschim V'Abo Eifos Tmeim Havu Ef Shedachad the Ika Bahanoch Leka Bahani. V'havuluhu shnei ksuma boin ki echod gemiri esrim v'abo oifos tmeim havu v'abo simonim tlosa hadrei bekulu esrim. There are three that are in all of the esrim on 20. Mehem shloisha utrei b'oirev. There are 3 and 3 and 2 in oirev and chad b'peres v'chad b'ozniya. D'isi b'hai leka b'hai. Mal the same Leilat Minei, Kozlachon and Nesher v'chule. But it's not clear over here what the Kabbalah is, because the Chachamim, Hisigam, the Ram says. So it could be after they came to conclusion, they were Moisei L'Deres, but the Ram says they clearly came to conclusion. So the emphasis of Chaim is grappling with this, but what he says, I must frankly say, I don't understand. The Rambam in Perek Aleph, Halacha Tezayin, Reb Chaim Perek Aleph, the San Malchus Asuris, Vaniu Loyim V'das Rambam, the Svilei de Beika Din Teira, Chol Kach Simonei, Deinu Deis, Meidoch Shloish Simonei Tahira Shebegufa. There's Simonei Tumo and Simonei Tahira. Darei din Simonei be'oif. Listen to this. Darei din Simonei be'oifos have a halacha Moshe Misinai. I don't know, what can I say? I'll leave it for yourself to draw the conclusion about this. Halacha Moshe Misinai. Veheim chalois din shel Simonei Taira. Ve'afriluhu meineshe bebinyanav. V'hu zeh drosha gemura. Be din Torah, lo asmach, there's a drasha gemur, but it's not called din Torah, but it's called midivrei Sefer, as all Yud Gimel Midas are, as the Ram says in Shirish Beis. And he goes on, the Shmamin, I'll leave skipping a little bit, the Shmamin no, mikol zeh, Shmamin mikol zeh, to who zed drosha gemur b'din Torah. It is a drosha gemur, but it's not b'din Torah. I don't know. What can I tell you? It's not what the Ram is saying here. Rab Chaim is trying very hard. He's not even quoting the problem at Shurish Beis. I just don't see it. And I'll quote you another line. I'm going to skip a little bit. Ulefi zeh Rab Chaim, harei vadei dekol habinyan av v'din Simanei Torah heim midin Torah. I don't know if the Rambam clearly says it. It's not din Torah. So here, the question is, this sounds almost like the Rambam clearly, again and again, says this violates Shurish Sheni, and he counts the mitzvah mitzvahs. True, Rab Chaim, he's not even dealing with the problem. He tries to make it a din Torah. Halachah Shusina, Halachah Shusina wouldn't be enough here. It has to be in Torah B'Ksav or in Pirush Mekubal, but I don't see it. So now we're going to try to deal with this problem, and this I think is a problem which is worth trying to tackle if you can. I don't know. So what's happening over here? There's a chiyuv d'oraisa to do b'dika simonim, and the simonim that you're supposed to do b'dika with are only b'divrei seifim, don't exist in the Torah. So how can you have a mitzvah and a minyan? However, the Rambam has a something which he pull on, and the way he learns things, he can use it. See, you have to understand that the Rambam here quotes a Sefer. And the Sefer says, which we have as a Medrash Tanoim in Dvorim Yudal and Yud Aleph, it is true also that the Ramban also quotes this as a Sefer, but whether it's a Sefer or not is really a member. The Rambam learned it's a member from Atiki Ashmur called Tziput Tahira Teichelu. Zo Mitzvas Aseh. So it means the Matiki Ashmur said that it's a Mitzvah Aseh. But that's very odd. The Mitzvah Aseh means that it's a lava bomacha aseh l'chayra. A lava bomacha aseh, and there's no aseh to eat an oif toho, so there must be an aseh to borik simonim. The Ram derived the aseh in the last mitzvah, lava b'mocha aseh. So he's using the same paradigm here to derive the mitzvah. So you basically have two things which are antithetical and somehow making a mitzvah. On one hand, everything that we've spoken about is that the simonim have a makor in Torah B'Ksav, at least with the Rambam Kupit Torah B'Ksav and Shurish Sheni. And on the other hand, the Matiki Ashmur said that there's a mitzvah aseh over here. And we know very well that there can't be if you're talking about the Isa saving or if Tomei, that can't be a mitzvah because we only count Kumva Aseh and Mitzvah Aseh. And when the Matiki Ashmur is a Mitzvah Aseh, the Ram said very clearly in Shurish Shmini that it's a Kumva Aseh. So on one hand, in Shurish Sheni, you have this impossibility to say that a mitzvah, a simonim, which Chachmei HaMesorah, that the B'teres Chachomim, not B'teres Kabbalah, came to the conclusion about simonim. And on the other hand, the Matiki Ashmur said there's a mitzvah here. And that's the Rambam's basing on, because it is Sifri. So then it's something else. Next step. The Rambam let's just say, okay, so what do you have before we take the next step? We have an Isa Aseh, which can't be minyan mitzvahs. So there must be a kumvaseh over here. And the kumvaseh can't be eating because there's no mitzvah of eating an oif toho, so it must be bedika. And the simonim, which are the modus operandi to do the mitzvah, don't really exist in Minatera. But the Matikeh Shmur did say there's a mitzvah here. Then you have another raya. There's a pasuk in the Torah that says in Vayiko Chof Hey, Vivdaltem bein Beheima, HaBeheima HaTehira Latmeya, Ubein Ha'oif HaTome Latoho. The Torah says that man should be mavdil between Beheima Tmeya and Torah Tmeya, and Oif Tomei and Oif Toho. This is very nice. And then the Rambam says in Kuf Nun Beis that the word Havdalah means Havdalah through Simanei. You see in Kuf Nun Beis, he says, Vavdola omnom tiye b'simonim. Vivdalta bein Beheima tehila tmeya v'havdola omnom tiye b'simonim. Or Kappa has it, v'loi tehei ela b'simonim. That's much better for us. Loi tehei ela b'simonim. What does that mean? He learned that the word Havdalah in the Torah means that you can look at the Beheima without having any idea of being a biologist and understanding species and where it actually fits on the animal tree, whatever it is. You don't know names, you don't know anything, but you look at the simonim and you can come to conclusions whether it's tamei or toho. That's what the word Havdalah is. And okay, Havdalah by Tmeya and Tahira and Beheima we understand because the Torah says simonim. But Havdalah by Oifos, which the Matiki Hashmur said there is a mitzvah of simonim, and there is also a ra in Torah Shebiksav of Havdalah that they also simonim. This is an amazing thing. If there is a ra, there's a mitzvah. Okay, and both in the Matiki Ashmur and from Torah Shebiksav, and we know it's Ayidei Simonim, even though the Simonim, which we conclude are only ours since the Havdalah, and this mitzvah is based on Simonim, the Torah says it's a mitzvah, the Torah says, as they say in Yiddish, and the Chama are entrusted to look for them, and it's a Chal Hashem D'Oraisa, even though in Minyan HaMitzvah shouldn't exist, because we're not bothered by Shiur Sheni, because there's Hayron Torah Shebiksav, and Hayron in, from the Matiki Ashmur, from the Pirush Makubal, that there is a mitzvah here. So under such a situation, we have the right to find these Simonim and to tell us what the mitzvah is. It's an absolutely amazing thing. The Matikei Shmua said there is a mitzvah, and the Torah says Havdalah, and the Ram says that the word Havdalah means Simonim in Kufnun Beis. So even though the Torah doesn't tell us Simonim, the Torah is an Eidus there are Simonim, and the Torah entrusted the Chachamim to find the Simonim, and we have to use them. So I don't think it's really a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah which is a from Yud Gimel Midas. The mitzvah is entrenched in Torah Shebiksav. It's just to understand the modus operandi and define what the Simonim are who entrusted in the Chacham. I think that's palatable. I'm not sure that it's exciting, but I think that's what's happening over here. So it comes down to something like Rab Chaim. There's a Chal Hashem Deraisa, but it's a Chal Hashem Deraisa starting not from the fact that they learned it out from the Midas HaTorah. You see, it could be that the Midas HaTorah are only considered Divrei Sofim, can't be used if the Chum apply them at their own volition. And maybe over here, the Midas HaTorah, there's Hera from the Matikei Shmua, there's a Kabbalah to use the Yud Gimel Midas. And maybe that will help. But whatever it is, it's very clear there's a mitzvah over here, and it has a base in Matikei Shmua, and a base in Torah Shebiksav, and the Simonim are certainly the Chachamim found them through their Chakir. Basically, I just like to point one thing out to you, and maybe we'll pick this up a little bit next week also. There's something very strange going on here, because in all the cases of Simonim that we have, the Simanei Beheima v'Chaya, Simanei Chagovim, and Simanei Oifos, they are all Simanei Tahara. And comes, and you need all of them, and they're ikuva. In Oifos, you have one siman tuma, which is deires, v'oichel, whatever deires means, look around people shnayis and other issues, whatever. You might be holding on to it and eating. We'll have to see. And there are three simonei tahara. And you don't need all the simonim, so it's not even at all similar to the other cases of simonim. But I don't know if it has to be. You're using simonim to identify the min you're allowed to eat. And that's what Chazal concluded. In the way in the Torah, the way you identify the min is by having all the simonim. And the simonim really identify it's not one of the chavdalad oifos, tameim. It's not one of the chavdalad of his tameim. Maybe you can eat it. And the truth is, it's very different. You look in Mishnah Torah, when he talks about someone who knows the minim, and by Beheima and Chaya, the reason you can eat it is not because of the min, but it's because you know that this min has mafreses parsa v'shasa shesa. It really is knowing the min is also simonim. But in Eifus, it's just the opposite. If you know the min, you're allowed to eat it, because they identify the min in the Torah as matir. It's only through simonim you identify that it's not from chavdalad minim. And Mitzvah Hashem, we'll pick up further next week. Bli neder.